Hey guys, welcome to History Behind the Warrior, and today we're going to be talking about Ken Masters. Ken is the son of a rich hotel tycoon, and as such was rather spoiled as a child. To make sure the boy had any form of discipline, and to ensure he didn't leech off the family fortune in the future, he would send the boy to Japan to train under Goken, since Ken's father was a very close friend of Goken. Now when he arrived at the dojo, he was very hesitant to settle down there. It did take some time for Ken to become comfortable with where he lived now. Luckily for Ken, when he was living at Goken's dojo, there was another boy going by the name of Ryu. The two would always spar with each other, creating a very tightly knit friendship between the two. Plus, Ken was rather crafty as a kid and would constantly pull pranks on Ryu. Now when the two were at the age of 23, Goken would send the two out into the world. Ryu decided to travel the world, whereas Ken was finally happy to go back home to the United States. When Ken returned to the United States, he would participate in many martial arts tournaments, winning most of them. Ken did not participate in the World Warrior tournament. Instead, he fought in the US Martial Arts tournament, which was held by Charlie Nash. At this tournament, he would meet a very attractive woman by the name of Eliza, who would later become his girlfriend and wife. After winning the US Martial Arts tournament, Ken would return back home to Japan to visit Goken. When Ken arrived at the dojo, he would bear witness to his master's death at the hands of Akuma, the brother of Goken and another practitioner of a Natsuken. Except Akuma would train in the original version of a Natsuken known as the Satsue no Hado. Now Ken would attack Akuma, but be knocked out with a single blow. When Ken regained his senses, Ryu had just recently returned back to the dojo as well. Ken would explain the situation to Ryu, and the two would travel the world in order to find Akuma. Ryu and Ken would have a very quick sparring match, with Ken defeating Ryu. Ken realizes of how stressed Ryu has been ever since the events that transpired at the first World Warrior tournament. As a gesture of goodwill, and a way of telling Ryu to constantly concentrate on what he wants, Ken would give Ryu his red headband, as a constant reminder to keep training. During his travels, Ken would also come across a girl named Karin, a fan of Ken's fighting style and rival of Sakura. Ken gives her advice, saying it's good to have a rival not for supremacy, but in order to train harder. Ken would later meet Sakura, and the two would go off and find Ryu. However, on their journey they would come across Shadowloo dictator M. Bison. Ken would confront Bison but is ultimately defeated and placed under Bison's hypnosis. Bison would then use the brainwashed Ken to lure out Ryu. When Ryu appears, Bison forces the two to fight against each other, with Ryu winning and releasing Ken of Bison's mind control. Ryu would then attempt to defeat Bison, but ultimately lose and become a slave to Bison's control. Sagat would appear and be disgusted by Bison's actions. Sagat would fight the brainwashed Ryu, whilst Ken and Sakura would attack Bison. Sagat was able to break Ryu from Bison's mind control, in which Ryu then turned on Bison and defeated him with a powerful Hadouken. Ken would be happy to see his old friend again, and the two would promise to have another fight again in the near future. Ken would receive an invitation to the second World Warrior tournament. However, since his last US Martial Arts tournament, he's been spending his time with his girlfriend Eliza. Ryu would personally challenge Ken in order to rekindle his fighting spirit and persuade him to enter the tournament. It is unknown whether or not the two actually came across each other's path during the second tournament, although it is heavily implied that the two did fight and Ken won. Not long after this, Ken and Eliza would become husband and wife, and Eliza would later become pregnant. During her pregnancy, Ken was invited to another tournament. Ken does not wish to leave her side, but Eliza insists that he goes and participates in it. During his travels, Ken would constantly call Eliza to check up on her, not only because he missed his wife, but he also didn't want to lose the opportunity of seeing the birth of his child. Over the course of the tournament, he would encounter his self-appointed rival Rufus, although the results of that match are unknown. During the course of the tournament as well, he would find out that Goken is still alive. Ryu and Ken would pursue after him, with Ken being upset at Goken for not saying anything to them. But Goken remarks that he is no longer their master, and they have by far surpassed him. Ken would return back home, just in time for the birth of his son Mel. Sometime later, Ken and his family would move to Southern California from Washington State and enter the third World Warrior tournament. He would also meet a young Brazilian teenager named Sean. Sean would constantly pester Ken about becoming his student. Although Ken denied this for a very long time, Ken eventually caved and began teaching Sean. During the third tournament, he would fight Sean and defeat his student, Although Ken was never defeated during the tournament, he would drop out, learning that Ryu had actually been defeated by Oro. After doing so, Ken would begin training his son Mel. He would also tell Sean to go find Ryu and challenge him, giving him some free time with Eliza. Ken would participate in another US martial arts tournament and win for the 3rd straight time. This sets a new record in the history of the US martial arts tournament. He offers the trophy to Sean, but a student says he wishes to earn the trophy for himself. He would then have a sparring match with his old friend Ryu, with Ryu beating Ken. The two had enjoyed their sparring match and returned back to their lives, with Ryu returning on the road in order to travel and learn more about himself. Ken would return back home to his family, training Sean and Mel and handling his family business. That's it for Ken, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. I do love the relationship between Ken Masters and Ryu, as I treat it as a relationship between two brothers, both aspiring to do great things with their lives but taking different ways of doing so. Now here's a preview for next week's Tekken episode, guys.
これが現実だ。
Many people saw this one coming, and it would be no surprise that I'm covering Jin next week. He's my favourite character of the series, and he plays a rather vital role in the stories, now becoming kind of the protagonist. Now as always guys, please comment, like, subscribe and share this video with everyone you know, and I will see you guys next time.